That was just wonderful. I just have to say, that's Howard. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the funeral service.
My friends, we have gathered here this afternoon, of course, to pay respects and tribute to a very unique individual. I'm not aware of any other individual who passed out $2 bills and had a band play the intro. Howard Lawrence Stone of blessed memory. I don't recall exactly when I first met Howard. I believe it had something to do with members of his extended family who had somewhat of an association with Chabad before it was known as Chabad. Whether it was the Lubavitcher Shul on the old west side of Chicago, whether it was the Nusach Hari Shul in Albany Park, or the Bnei Reuven Shul in West Rogers Park, somewhere, somehow, we were introduced and met. Susan had to remind me that I koshered their home back in the 1990s. I guess there are so many who wish to kosher their homes, so how do you expect me to remember? However, whenever I did meet Howard, I recall his smile, his refined nature, his Edelkeit, his mellowness, his courtesy, and much, much more. I saw Howard a few weeks ago at the hospital. I subsequently saw him at his brother Ron's funeral. Something must have prompted me to call him before this past Rosh Hashanah, wishing him a Happy New Year. Little did I know that this would be our last chat, our last conversation. Howard was born and raised first on the west side of Chicago by a loving single mom. He was the second of 3 sons. Unfortunately, his father had left when Howard was only 2 years old. But fortunately, he and his brothers were blessed with an extending, loving family who, though may not have been able to help financially, but did provide, certainly, did provide encouragement, moral support, kindness, and goodwill. When he was about 7 years old, the family moved to East Rogers Park from the west side, partially to be close to relatives who had already resided in East Rogers Park. Howard, very early on, realized and understood that he had to do his share in helping provide for his mom and brothers. From about the age of 7, he began working. He worked first as a soda jerk in a drugstore. He later did paper routes, hot dog stands, Pizza Huts, janitorial work, dishwashing, whatever it took. Howard was up to it, was up to the challenge. In all these endeavors, Howard learned to interact with different and diverse people, and developed a work ethic which lasted to the very last day of his life. Howard attended Sullivan High School, University of Illinois, graduated Roosevelt with a CPA degree, and later with a law degree from DePaul. He met the love of his life, Susan, at age 14. They married several years later on June the 2nd, 1963, the day of Howard's graduation from Roosevelt. Howard and Susan were a pair, a team, a dynamic duo for 62 full years. And partnering together through the joys and challenges of life. We know how difficult this must be for you, Susan, and the family. After his marriage, Howard first worked for the IRS. He later became a federal prosecutor for the Attorney General's office, and at one point, Howard decided he wanted to be on his own and work for himself. He went into private practice, majored with white-collar crimes, and was proud of the cases he won, feeling he fought for justice and received it. All in all, Howard was always loyal, committed, and caring. He was always ambitious and generous to a fault. He and Susan created the Gerontological Research Institute Department at the University of Illinois, which involved a teaching nursing home meant to improve the conditions of the elderly in our country. And indeed, Howard was very grateful, patriotic to the United States, and would contribute more than was required and requested, and do this generously. Jewishly, Howard had his bar mitzvah at Congregation B'nai Zion in East Rogers Park. Ironically, it was a priest who knew him from his youth at the drugstore who pushed for Howard to get a Jewish religious education. Howard and Susan were active in the JRC congregation of Evanston. They were founders of the Chicagoland Jewish Day School, among many other philanthropic causes and endeavors. Howard believed in the integrity and ethical upkeep of the law. He believed in honesty. He would tell his children, quote, "You won't get into trouble if you tell the truth." Howard was a Shriner. He had a sense of humor. He was a mentor to many. He was extremely loyal to his many friends, many who are here today. He was a fighter. He overcame challenges, medical and otherwise, throughout his lifetime. However, Howard's greatest love, passion, and desire was reserved for his loving family, his wife Susan, his children, Laurie and Gary, David, Andrea, and his grandchildren, Samuel, Jacob, and Alexa, Sarah, and Eli. We will now hear some words of tribute from members of the family.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I have two quick notes before I start. First is that I'm speaking on behalf of all of Pa's grandchildren, and I apologize in advance for the tears. If you know any of us, you know Pa, and you know Grandma. Pa has been one of the most pivotal people in our lives and will forever continue to be. We are filled with so much sadness. We will miss Pa so much, and also so much profound gratitude for our unique and special connections with Pa. Pa, thank you for working so hard your entire life to create the most beautiful life for me and all of us. You really did it. Thank you for building this unbelievable family and community, a group of people who look up to you, adore you, and will carry you with them. Our kids will know you as Pa, and I know everyone here will have many Pa stories for them. When we were young, Pa, otherwise known as the Director of Safety, would take us on late-night assignments. He'd make up the latest Glencoe crime scenarios, and we'd venture out of their house on Skokie Ridge, each equipped with a flashlight or two, maybe a vest, and headlights depending on the severity of the case. Pa was so playful and creative that at age 77, he decided to be an active Second City student, jumping into classes with strangers, often being the oldest one there. He even got Sam to take a course with him. He always said, Second City classes are useful in any career as it teaches a greater life lesson, to be confident, poised, and have the courage to speak from your heart and connect with strangers.
Improvisation.
In every facet of life, Pa wanted to talk to and get to know each person he came across, often giving someone a $2 bill just for good luck upon meeting them, whether it was the Glencoe Starbucks barista, local police and fire department, Uber driver, or nurses taking care of him in the hospital. And he met everyone exactly where they were, with curiosity, generosity, and so much love. I will miss and I will always cherish coming into your room for our late night chats and planning how we'd trick or mess with Grandma. Taking the scenic route on Forest Way, so proud to be driving in the Pa #1 license plate. Your frequent check-in texts and calls, and prank-style voicemails, pretending you're a range of different people and characters. Your career advice on how to provide the best care for older adults and those at the end of life. In our recent pursuit of convincing Grandma to get another dog. While Grandma did not let you win that, I know you are now playing the game with Sage, and she's giving you so many kisses. We will always love you, Pa. Your spirit and soul will live on forever in everything we do. And don't worry, we will take care of you, Grandma. I love you more than the sky.
Pa would always say he would end every text with LMTTS, which is what Sarah just said, which is, I love you more than the sky. And sometimes you'd ask him, well, what does that mean? And he says, it's the only thing you'll ever need to say because it's just more than the sky, so you don't need to worry about it. So I love you more than the sky.
Love you more than the sky, Pa. As Elias, described, this idea of something beyond the sky, this imaginative kind of improvisational impulse that Pa led his life, carried with him through every event, every interaction that he could bring, like as with these $2 bills. He brought this infinite, beyond the sky, some might call it God, into his every day-to-day reaction or interaction. love you more than the sky, and that's all I got. I don't know what else to say here.
Love you more than the sky, Pa.
We love you more than the sky, Pa.
Needless to say, as most of us here know, my dad was quite a character, right? Throughout his long life, he supported quite a number of unconventional looks. Long before he wandered the streets of Glencoe with his special order multi-pocket police pants and signature vest, he cycled the North Shore in, picture this please, and remember this is before we knew how important bike helmets were, in the tightest of bike shorts and shirts, the top-of-the-line special order helmet with rear view mirrors on each side, and a signature unlit but heavily chewed cigar lodged on one side of his mouth. And I will mention that this look lasted far longer than the bike ride. He'd wear it during the day too. The thing about my father was that in many ways, my dad was really quite comfortable being his own man and fairly sure about who he was. A one-of-a-kind with remarkable spirit, more than his fair share of idiosyncrasies, tremendous passion, lots of opinions, a boyish playfulness till the end, remarkable generosity, and always, always, always so much love to share. In other ways, to be honest, and I think largely due to his difficult childhood, he wasn't able to sit in that comfort as easily as I had wished. The imprints of poverty were permanent. There were fears of abandonment, a through line that suggested that catastrophe might be around the corner. And living outside of certain boxes may have been difficult for him to understand or embrace easily at first. When I think about my father's legacy and all of the things we can take, and we could of course go in a lot of directions here, I think most of us can agree that to Howard Stone, there were 4 values that were particularly important. Showing up, trying hard to support others and do good for them, loving deeply and fully, and having a really good time too. So, showing up. My father was there for all of us, his family, numerous friends, many of whom, frankly, we don't even know, his loved ones, his clients, his colleagues. My father was there for each of us when we needed him. Calls and texts were returned promptly. He was game to join or lead any holiday or Shabbat dinner, traveled wherever for a simcha or a funeral. He was in. Anything and everything that, of course, those 4 grandkids did and every show I was in, etc., he was there. He loved his people in his many communities, and he showed up. But I want to be clear about one thing. Just because he showed up does not mean he sat still. Because that was not easy for my dad at all. Let's just say that Howard had perpetual spilkes in Yiddish ants in his pants. We would often ask, is Howard back? Where's Howard now? Where'd he go? And by the way, that was particularly difficult before cell phones were invented. And honestly, the answer to those questions was often connected to that next value. He was trying his best to support and do good for others. My dad took his various roles incredibly seriously. Professionally, his clients always received prompt, attentive, and thorough care, and his commitment to broader issues of justice were central to who he was and how he saw the world. Tzedakah, or giving charity, was not simply an afterthought for my father. It's part of what it meant to live a good and meaningful life and to be a responsible citizen of the world. Charity wasn't only money, it was offering your time and his insights. As the rabbi shared, there was the Fund for Gerontology at UIC. He certainly played a pivotal role at Chicago Jewish Day School in our early days. But it was also sort of the occasional, Suze, let's give money to this. Suze, let's give money to this. It was part of his DNA. And of course, as a friend, cousin, uncle, my dad didn't just listen. He offered ideas, often invited, sometimes not. Time, networks, resources, and follow through. He made so many people feel special and inspired. And sometimes, hold on 1 second. And that's because that idea of helping, that idea of being there, was so foundational to who he was. And lastly, as husband, dad, and pa. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that my dad literally worked his entire life to make those easier for those he loved. And that was, of course, my mother, Lori and me, Sam, Jacob, Sarah, and Eli. Given the challenges of childhood, he wanted all of us to struggle less, feel more supported, like we have a safety net, like we were not alone. And we all have so greatly benefited from that sense that we're not alone in the world. We have both one another and that safety net to support us. And for me, frankly, this framing can also help some of the more challenging parts of my relationship with my father. It wasn't always easy for my dad to accept the ways that I'm different. Perhaps it was my disinterest in sports, my less boyish ways, and particularly the red patent leather purse I think I slowly stole from Lori. And of course, my coming out. And it took me a while to understand that his fears and discomfort were really primarily about him rather than me. And not because he wasn't okay with who I was. He was worried that I wouldn't be okay. And at the end of the day, at every juncture, at each inflection point, love and acceptance won out. And that brings us to our third value, love deeply and fully. My dad was an incredibly loving guy, a super affectionate man who would smother Lori and me in kisses as children, instantly expanded his love to our friends, our girlfriends, boyfriends, partners, and of course, our children, and their girlfriends and boyfriends and partners and wives, or wife. Not to mention our extended family, close friends and communities. Loving deeply and fully emanated from his soul. And that love and passion wasn't limited to people. There was Judaism, music, numerous sports and hobbies, his love for the promise of America and issues of social justice. Now, admittedly, sometimes my dad's passion wasn't always warm and gentle. When his values, beliefs, or fears were at play, encountering his passion was not the most pleasant of experiences, as I'm sure many in this room have experienced. However, my dad kept an open mind, was actually quite open to feedback, and many times, especially from Mom, but she kind of insisted upon that, and many times grew and evolved. Most importantly, however, it was my dad's kind and open heart that ruled the day. The people were always more important to him than the problems or the differences, and loving and staying connected was always the priority. Lastly, have a good time. So my dad, as we all know, liked to have fun, and he wanted others to as well. He was fun, funny, playful, charming, and he had that certain sparkle in his eye that seduced so many of us to go on adventures or play jokes or tricks on people. Particularly, many focused on my mother. His lifelong playmate who always fell for it, even though it was so obvious it was bullshit. And that's because, and the rabbi used the same term, my parents were quite the dynamic duo in our world. Our version of Lucy and Ricky, Wilma and Fred, Archie and Edith, we can choose which, maybe it's a drinking game. They were in it together. My father became the man he was with and through my mother. They were a forceful presence, pitching large tents that were open to all, offering high doses of laughter, opinions, and their unique recipe for making all of us feel special, close, and loved. And luckily, that's not going away. Not just because Suze is still here and God knows she's got plenty to offer, but because it's here with all of us, and because we all feel it and have felt it and continue to. Because the one thing that I know would make my dad really happy is for us to continue these legacies, to continue to bring them to life, to pass them on. Well, I would miss you, Dad, terribly. In our world with unimaginable pain and tragedy so close to our lives, I'm really mostly grateful to have had you for so long and that you didn't suffer much in the end. Grateful to be amongst the thousands that you have shown up for, reliably supported, tremendously loved so very deeply, and had some really great friggin' fun with. To watch you become the man you were as I became the man I am today and will continue to grow to be. Dad, may your memory continue to be may your memory be a blessing for us all. Thank you all.
I suspect that Howard would be very proud with the testimonies by his family. I don't only suspect, I am certain. And I hope you are as well, Susan. Howard passed on Simchat Torah, and perhaps this explains the band we heard earlier, Simchat Torah being a time of song and dance. On Simchat Torah, we finished the book of Deuteronomy, which talks about the passing of Moses. And we know, even though Moses passes, his teachings still live on. Howard as well, even though he has passed, his values and what he stood for will still continue to live on for a long time by the wonderful family he and Susan molded and created. On Simchat Torah, we also start a new Torah cycle and begin reading the book of Genesis, Bereshit again, which is the Torah portion for tonight, Shabbat, and tomorrow. In a brilliant essay on this week's Torah portion, the great Rabbi Jonathan Sacks wrote, quote, "The real subject of the Torah is not our faith in God, but God's faith, unfailing faith in us. The Torah is not man's book of God, it is God's book of man. God never stops believing in us, loving us, and hoping for the best from us. There may be times in our lives when the sun disappears. At such times, the knowledge that God has faith in us is transformative and redemptive. Yehei Zechro Baruch. May Howard's memory be a blessing. Utehei Nishmato Tzurah B'Tzor HaChaim. May the soul of Aaron ben Avraham V'Tzipora be bound in the bond of eternal life. V'yanuach hamishkavo b'shalom. May he rest on his resting place in peace." We will now chant Psalm 23 in Hebrew, followed by the English. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot teshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yinaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha, heima yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzoreroi, Tishanta vashemen roshi kosi rivaya ach tov vachesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'heshafti beveit Adonai Orech Yamim. Please turn to the inner flap of our brochure. Page 2, let us read Psalm 23 together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It is Erev Shabbat, and ordinarily we do Kel Maleh, but according to Halacha, this is sort of a time where we suspend grief for a moment and we think of the good things of the good Sabbath. So we'll conclude with Adon Olam, which many of us remember from Hebrew school. Adon Olam asher malach beterem kol yitzur nivra liet nasa v'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kechlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hove v'hu yiyeh betif'ara v'hu echad v'yein sheni lahamshil lo lahachbira beli reishit beli tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai goali v'tzor chevli v'eitzara v'hu nisi umanos li menat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado afkid ruchi b'eit ishan v'ya'ira v'imruchi geviyati Adonai li v'lo ira. God is my Lord, my living Redeemer, rock of my pain in time of distress. God is my banner and my refuge, the portion of my cup on the day I call. Into God's hand we entrust our spirit when we sleep and when we awaken. As long as our soul is with our body, the Lord is with us, we shall not fear.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Shalom Memorial Park Cemetery, located at 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. Please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. The family will be at the Stone Residence for Shiva at 450 Green Bay Road, apartment 2A in Glencoe. They'll be together today until Shabbat, Saturday evening 7:15 to 9 p.m., Sunday from 12 noon to 5, then resuming at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Memorial contributions to the Chicago Jewish Day School would be appreciated. And for those of you who are joining us via live stream, all that information can be found on the funeral home's website. At this time, I invite the family members that have been asked to serve as pallbearers to please come forward as we escort Howard's casket from the chapel. Also, I ask everyone to please rise. And finally, as honorary pallbearers, anyone who's wearing a vest, please escort Howard to the hearse.